take a deep breath. Not a nervous breath, an obedient breath. Because today, the message is simple, but it is powerful. Relax and let the flow begin. Some of you have been working hard, very hard. You have planned, you have sacrificed, you have carried responsibilities like heavy stones in both hands. And yet, when you look at your finances, you feel the pressure rising like a storm. Bills here, expectations there, family needs, future fears. You smile outside, but inside you are calculating, worrying, replaying, predicting. My friend, listen carefully. Anxiety is not your assignment anymore. Now, when I say relax, I am not preaching laziness. I am not saying stop working, stop learning, stop improving. No, I am saying stop trembling, stop panicking, stop behaving as if you are alone. Because when you truly trust God, peace comes first, and then provision follows. Faith flows best in rest. Let me speak this into your spirit. God is not only watching your struggle, He is ready to shoulder your burden. Many people hustle with fear, grind with anxiety, and pray with doubt, but heaven does not respond to desperation the way it responds to faith. When you shift from worry to worship, from stress to surrender, something begins to change inside you, and when the inside changes, the outside must eventually follow. You must understand this. Your job is not your source. Your business is not your source. Your connections are not your source. They are channels. And channels can dry up. Channels can change. But the source never changes. When the source is unlimited, the supply cannot remain limited forever. So today, we are not begging in fear. We are believing in peace. And listen, your mouth is not just for complaints. It is for confession. Not empty talk, not prideful shouting, but faith-filled words that agree with God's promises instead of agreeing with your panic. Too many people speak lack all day, then wonder why lack feels so strong. Today, change your language. Speak peace. Speak trust. Speak gratitude before you see the result. I want you to picture it: money flowing like water. Water does not fight. Water does not strain. Water moves steadily, surely. When the path is open, fear clogs the path. Anxiety tightens the heart. But when you relax in faith, you open your spirit to receive wisdom, opportunities, favor, and unexpected provision. This is not magic. This is not fantasy. This is the spiritual principle: peace over panic, trust over control, faith over fear. So today, lay down the burden. Not tomorrow. Today, say in your heart, I will be responsible, I will be faithful, I will be wise, but I will not be afraid. And as you choose that posture, you will find that God begins to handle what you could not handle. Relax, because you are not abandoned. Relax, because you are not alone. Relax, because provision is already being arranged. And your peace is the proof that you trust Him. Rest is not laziness, because laziness is avoidance. But true rest is alignment. Laziness runs away from responsibility. Rest returns responsibility to its proper place. When a person is lazy, they shrink from doing what they should do. When a person is resting in faith, they do what they can do, and they refuse to do what they were never designed to carry. The difference is not in whether you act, but in what spirit you act. Laziness says, I won't move. Faith-filled rest says, I will move, but I will not be driven by fear. To understand this, you must see how fear changes the human body and mind. When fear rises, the body can shift into a stress response. Heart rate and breathing accelerate, muscles tighten, and the whole system becomes hyper, alert, as if danger is immediate. In that mode, you can still work, but your work becomes strained. You may still earn, but the earning feels like chasing, grasping, scrambling. Your decisions become narrower. You begin reacting instead of discerning. You start calling panic wisdom, and you start calling anxiety responsibility. But that is not responsibility, it is overload. Stress can sharpen focus for a moment, but it becomes harmful when limits are exceeded and the body stays in that alert state too long. In other words, the engine can rev for a sprint, but it was not built to redline all day. Faith-filled rest is the choice to step out of that constant redline. It is not denial of reality, it is refusal to be ruled by fear. When you rest in faith, you are not saying, there is no problem. You are saying, there is a problem, but fear will not be my master. That decision is active. It is work on the inside. It takes strength to breathe slowly when everything in you wants to rush. It takes discipline to pause when your mind wants to spiral. It takes maturity to plan without panic. This is why rest is not passive. It is a form of spiritual authority over your inner world. You are telling your nervous system, your thoughts, your emotions, and your habits, you will not drag me, you will follow me. Many people misunderstand rest because they only think of rest as sleep or taking a break. But rest, in the deeper sense, is a posture. It is the ability to remain centered while you move forward. You can be busy and still be resting because your heart is not frantic. You can be in a demanding season and still be resting because your mind is not collapsing into what if. This kind of rest is what allows you to act with clarity. It helps you see opportunity without desperation, to negotiate without insecurity, to work without losing your peace. Without rest, you may still do the right tasks, but you will do them with the wrong fuel, and the wrong fuel always costs you more than you realize. This is why the statement, rest is faith in action, matters. Faith is not merely belief that things will improve someday. Faith is trust expressed today. If you truly trust, you will not keep tightening your fists around what you cannot control. If you truly trust, you will not keep punishing yourself with endless mental rehearsals. You will do your part, but you will not try to play the role of the provider, the planner of all outcomes, the controller of every variable. Rest is faith because it says, I am not alone in this. And it is action because it changes what you do next. It changes the way you speak, the way you decide, the way you respond to delays, and the way you carry pressure. It turns your effort from striving to stewardship. Notice what happens when you do not rest. You may begin to measure your worth by your bank balance, your success by your speed, your safety by your constant checking. You check messages repeatedly, refresh accounts, replay conversations, and imagine worst-case scenarios. That mental loop feels like productivity, but it often produces very little. It consumes energy that could have become creativity. It drains courage that could have become consistency. It steals the calm you need to learn new skills, build better relationships, and recognize open doors. Worry can masquerade as responsibility, but it rarely produces the fruit of responsibility. Responsibility produces structure, planning, and action. Worry produces tension, impulsiveness, and exhaustion. Rest, then, is not a pause from action. It is the restoration of your inner order so that your actions carry power. Think of it like this. A person who is panicking may run fast, but they run in circles. A person who is resting may move slower, but they move straight. Rest gives you direction. It helps you distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. It helps you understand that some doors are not opened by force, but by timing. It helps you accept that wisdom sometimes looks like patience, and that patience is not weakness. When you are resting in faith, you are not numb, you are stable. You are not indifferent, you are anchored. And because you are anchored, You can act decisively without acting destructively. This is also why rest is deeply connected to performance and well-being. Burnout is often celebrated in modern culture as if exhaustion proves value. But exhaustion is not a badge of honor, it is a warning sign. The body and mind were designed for rhythms, effort and recovery, output and renewal. If you never recover, you do not become stronger, you become brittle. Faith-filled rest protects your future by protecting your present capacity. It preserves your judgment. It keeps your relationships intact. It prevents you from making fear-based decisions that solve today's discomfort but create tomorrow's crisis. Rest, in this sense, is stewardship of your own life. Now let us bring this to finances. Many people assume that money responds only to hustle. Hustle has a place, work has dignity, diligence matters, excellence matters. But panic does not increase excellence, it often decreases it. Panic makes people cut corners, speak harshly, rush agreements, and lose credibility. Peace, on the other hand, makes you consistent. It helps you show up with a clear mind, communicate better, and make wiser choices. When you rest in faith, you are not doing nothing. You are choosing to work from peace, which means your work becomes cleaner, your decisions become sharper, and your relationships become healthier. Over time, those are the conditions where provision can increase, not because you manipulated anything, but because you remained steady enough to receive and manage what comes. Rest is also faith because it changes your language. A worried person speaks as if failure is inevitable. A resting person speaks as if guidance is available. A worried person says, "I don't know what will happen," and stops there. A resting person says, "I don't know what will happen, but I will take the next wise step." This is not pretending, it is positioning. It is the inner agreement that fear will not write your script. In practical terms, it means you plan your day, you set priorities, you do the work in front of you, you learn from feedback, you save where you can, you give where you should, and you refuse to let tomorrow's unknown steal today's peace. That is faith in action, because your peace is not accidental, it is chosen. So when you hear relax, do not imagine a command to be careless. Imagine a call to return to order, do what belongs to you, release what does not, and move forward with a calm heart. The lazy person uses rest to escape purpose. The faithful person uses rest to strengthen purpose. The lazy person rests to avoid work. The faithful person rests so their work is not poisoned by fear. The lazy person rests and drifts. The faithful person rests and directs. When you stop striving in fear, you do not stop moving, you stop shaking, you stop scrambling. You stop punishing yourself with pressure that was never meant to sit on your shoulders, and you begin to act from peace, which is the kind of rest that carries power right now. Anxiety blocks the flow because it changes what is happening inside you before it changes what is happening around you. And what happens inside you quietly governs your choices, your energy, your timing, and even the quality of the relationships and opportunities that money often travels through. When anxiety rises, it does not merely add a feeling, it activates a whole operating system built for emergency, not for abundance. Your mind begins scanning for threats, your body prepares for survival, and your attention narrows to what could go wrong, instead of what is wise. In that state, you may still be moving, but you move with tension. You may still be working, but your work becomes strained. You may still be planning, but your planning turns into obsessing. You start trying to control outcomes that no human can fully control, and the more you try to control, the more you feel out of control. This is the paradox of anxiety. It promises safety but produces bondage, and bondage is never a good environment for flow. Panic is not a spiritual strategy because panic is a form of counterfeit urgency. It screams, no, now, now, even when no is not the season for certain doors to open, certain relationships to mature, or certain results to manifest. Panic pushes you to force what should be formed, to grab what should be received, to rush what should be built. Under panic, you can mistake speed for progress. You can chase quick relief instead of lasting stability. You can accept poor terms because you are afraid of missing out, or you can reject good counsel because you are afraid of slowing down. Panic makes you treat every delay as danger, every silence as rejection, every expense as catastrophe. It turns normal challenges into personal threats. And once everything feels like a threat, you can't think clearly because clarity requires space, and panic steals space. When anxiety governs you, it often blocks the very behaviors that create sustainable increase: patience, consistency, discernment, humility, and learning. Anxiety shortens your horizon. It makes you want a breakthrough without a process and a harvest without a season. It can also sabotage your ability to listen. You may hear advice but not absorb it. You may pray but not rest. You may plan but not execute calmly. And because anxiety is exhausting, it reduces your capacity to persist. Many people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they burn out in the middle of the journey. Anxiety accelerates burnout because it convinces you that you must carry everything alone. When you feel alone, you push too hard. When you push too hard, you break. When you break, you must repair. And repair often costs more time and energy than steady progress would have cost. Anxiety also blocks flow by affecting how you relate to other people. And money often moves through people, employers, clients, partners, teams, and networks. When you are anxious, you can become overly defensive, overly needy, or overly controlling. You may communicate with pressure rather than confidence, and pressure is felt even when it's not spoken. You may negotiate from fear rather than value. You may overpromise to secure approval, then underdeliver because you are stretched. Or you may withdraw and miss opportunities because you fear rejection. In relationships, calm trust is magnetic, panic is abrasive. Calm trust invites collaboration, panic invites conflict. Calm trust builds credibility, panic erodes it. So when we say anxiety blocks the flow, we are not speaking mystically only. We are speaking practically. Anxiety weakens the very relational channels through which provision frequently arrives. Peace, then, is not just a pleasant feeling. It is evidence that you have shifted your trust. It proves you are no longer worshiping the illusion of control. Peace is the inner signature of surrender, not surrender as giving up, but surrender as handing over what you cannot carry while still honoring what you must do. Peace says, I will act, but I will not be driven. Peace says, I will be responsible, but I will not be terrified. Peace says, I will do my part, and I will let God do what only God can do. This is why peace is often the first miracle. Before circumstances change, the heart changes. Before the door opens, the mind stops pounding on the door. Before the supply increases, the soul stops choking the channel with fear. When peace arrives, it signals that faith has become active, because faith that is truly alive always has a posture. Worry is a posture. Trust is a posture. Peace is the posture of trust. Notice something important. Peace does not cancel action. It purifies action. In peace, you still work, but you work with better focus. You still plan, but you plan with clearer priorities. You still handle finances, but you handle them with wisdom instead of dread. Peace reduces impulsive decisions. It slows down emotional spending. It discourages risky shortcuts. It strengthens discipline because discipline is easier when your nervous system is not in crisis. Anxiety makes you crave quick comfort. Peace helps you choose long-term benefit. Anxiety makes you reactive. Peace makes you responsive. Anxiety makes you run in circles. Peace makes you walk in a straight line. And a straight line traveled consistently reaches destinations that frantic circles never reach. Another way anxiety blocks flow is by distorting your perception of God and of yourself. When you are anxious, you may begin to believe that you are defined by lack, and you may begin to treat lack like a permanent identity instead of a temporary season. You may start thinking, "This is just my life," and that belief becomes a ceiling. Anxiety loves absolute statements. "It will never change." "Nothing works." "I will always struggle." Those statements shut down hope, and hope is fuel for faithful action. Peace, on the other hand, restores your proper identity. You are not your current bank account. You are not your current delay. You are not your current debt. You are a person who can learn, grow, adjust, and be guided. When peace returns, it reopens your imagination, and imagination is not fantasy. It is the ability to see possibilities and to notice doors you were too stressed to notice before. So the practical meaning of key point 2 is this: anxiety blocks the flow because it hijacks your inner system, damages your decision-making, weakens your relationships, shortens your endurance, and clouds your spiritual posture. Panic is not a strategy because it creates motion without mastery and urgency without wisdom. Peace is the proof you trust because peace shows that you have placed your life back into the hands of God, and from that place you can still act, still build, still pursue excellence, but without the choking grip of fear. And when fear releases its grip, the heart becomes open, the mind becomes clear, the hands become steady, and the channels through which provision travels become free again to carry what was always meant to reach you. Key point 3 means you must separate the channel from the source. A channel is anything through which provision reaches you: a salary, a client, a contract, a side business, a bonus, a gift, an opportunity, an idea, a connection, even a season of learning that later turns into promotion. Channels are real and important, but they are not ultimate. A channel can open, close, slow down, change direction, or disappear. If your confidence is chained to one channel, but your peace rises and falls with that channel. When the paycheck comes, you feel safe. When it is delayed, you feel threatened. That swing reveals a hidden belief. My channel is my source. The key point challenges that belief and replaces it with a higher one. God is the source, and channels are simply pathways. When you understand source versus channel, your inner life stabilizes. You still value work, you still honor commitments, you still pursue excellence, but you stop worshiping the instrument. Many people don't realize they have made the instrument into an idol until the instrument shakes. The moment a job becomes uncertain, the heart panics. The moment a client leaves, the mind collapses. Why? Because the heart was leaning on the wrong support. Shifting dependence from salary to source does not remove effort, it removes torment. You keep climbing, but you stop shaking. Saying, "God is my source," is not a slogan for careless people, it is a framework for responsible people. It means you will do what belongs to you, work diligently, build skills, manage money wisely, keep integrity, while refusing to carry the illusion that everything depends on your strength alone. The source provides through many channels, and that is why you can be calm when one channel slows. You do not deny the problem, You deny the panic. You acknowledge the facts. You refuse the fear. You take action. You do not take anxiety. Your actions become clearer because they are not contaminated by desperation. Think about how people behave when they believe salary is the source. They cling. They compromise. They tolerate mistreatment because they fear losing the only stream. They become overly protective, overly suspicious, and afraid to say no. They fear training because training might expose weakness. They fear rest because rest might reduce output. Fear shrinks the soul and limits options, and limitation creates more fear. But when you know the source is greater than any one channel, you regain dignity. You can say, I will work with excellence, but I will not sell my conscience. You can serve faithfully without being manipulated by fear. If one door closes, you can grieve, learn, and still expect another door in the right time. This is not arrogance, it is anchored confidence. This point also protects you from pride. If your salary is your source, you may secretly believe your own hands are your source. Then you can become superior in seasons of abundance and crushed in seasons of lack. But channels can change quickly. When you know God is the source, you stay humble in plenty and hopeful in shortage. You recognize that open doors, timely ideas, helpful people, and even protection from unseen trouble are not merely luck or human control. Humility keeps you teachable, and teachability keeps you growing. Understanding channels helps you build multiple streams without anxiety. Some people hear, God is my source, and become passive, waiting for money to fall from the sky. That is misunderstanding. Often the provision comes as guidance, wisdom to budget, courage to apply for a role, discipline to study, patience to endure, or a new idea that becomes value. The source may expand your channels by expanding your capacity. You do not chase money in panic. You pursue purpose in peace, and provision follows purpose. Another part is emotional detachment. When a salary becomes the source, it becomes an emotional master. It dictates your mood, your sleep, and your identity. You start to ask, who am I without this job? Identity was never meant to be built on a channel. Identity must be deeper than income. When identity is stable, income becomes a tool, not a throne. You can be grateful for money without being controlled by it. You can desire increase without being consumed by it. You can work hard without being crushed by it. This principle also redefines security. Many people define security as, I have one guaranteed place. But in real life, very few things are guaranteed. True security is knowing you are guided and sustained even when situations shift. That security produces courage, courage to save, courage to give, courage to invest in learning, courage to plan long-term, courage to treat people well when stressed, courage to refuse shortcuts that destroy the future. When you are not frantic, you can make decisions that protect tomorrow. Practically, living this truth means you hold your job with open hands. You perform as if God is watching, not as if fear is chasing. You update your skills, nurture relationships, and keep a clean reputation because you are preparing channels without begging them. You budget so you can breathe, and you leave room for generosity so money never becomes your God. When setbacks come, you ask, what is my next obedient step? Instead of, who will save me? Open hands receive better than clenched fists, and a quiet heart hears guidance more clearly. Finally, this key point teaches gratitude and stewardship. If you treat the channel as your source, you either take it for granted or fear it constantly. But when you see the channel as a gift, you become grateful, and gratitude makes you a better steward. You respect your work, your time, and your finances. You handle money with purpose, not impulse. You see income as something entrusted to you to manage wisely and to use meaningfully. And you continue moving forward with the confidence that the source is able to sustain you through changes, transitions, and new seasons. Key point 4 explains a divine exchange. When you surrender control, provision becomes God's responsibility, while your responsibility becomes obedience and stewardship. Many people think surrender means stopping effort, but surrender is not the absence of action, it is the end of self-rule. It is the moment you admit, I cannot carry the outcome. You can carry your assignment, but you cannot carry tomorrow. You can carry diligence, but you cannot carry destiny. You can carry wise steps, but you cannot carry the weight of making life work by force. The day you surrender is the day you stop confusing control with faith. Control is the attempt to guarantee results through pressure. Faith is the choice to obey without guarantees, trusting that God can manage what you cannot manage. Surrender is powerful because it restores order. In the wrong order, you act like the provider and treat God like an emergency contact. You still work, but you work with peace instead of fear. You still plan, but you plan with humility instead of obsession. When you surrender, you step out of the illusion that everything depends on your nervous system, your sleepless nights, your frantic overthinking, or your constant checking. You stop acting like anxiety is a contribution. You stop offering God your stress as if it is proof of seriousness. Instead, you offer Him your trust, and trust is the language heaven responds to. When you surrender, you are not giving up responsibility, you are giving up ownership. Ownership says, this is mine to control. Responsibility says, this is mine to steward. Stewardship means you manage what is placed in your hands with integrity and wisdom. You don't waste time. You don't waste resources. You don't waste relationships. You don't waste opportunities. Obedience means you do what you know is right, even when you cannot predict the outcome. These two, obedience and stewardship, are your part. Supply is God's part. You cannot do God's part, and God will not do your part. When you try to do His part, you produce strain. When you neglect your part, but you produce stagnation. But when you do your part and surrender His part, you enter partnership. This partnership changes how you view money. Money stops being a master and becomes a tool. You no longer chase it like a frightened person trying to survive. You become a faithful person who serves, creates value, and manages resources. You work with excellence because excellence is obedience. You speak truth because truth is obedience. You avoid shortcuts because integrity is obedience. You save because saving is stewardship. You give because giving is stewardship. You budget because budgeting is stewardship. You learn because learning is stewardship. You build relationships because relationships are stewardship. None of these actions are attempts to control the future. They are preparations to receive what God supplies. Surrender also heals the heart from desperation. Desperation makes people manipulate, exaggerate, compromise, and rush. It makes them accept any offer, stay in toxic situations, or make reckless decisions just to feel safe. But surrender gives you dignity. It teaches you to wait without panic, to say no without fear, and to move without trembling. When you surrender, you can face uncertainty with stability, because you are not trying to predict everything. You are trying to obey step by step. You stop demanding to see the entire road. You take the next obedient step, then the next. And that is how the path opens. There is a spiritual reason surrender unlocks provision. God cannot guide a person who insists on driving with clenched fists. Guidance requires yielding. If you will not yield your plans, you will miss His directions. Surrender is not weakness, it is alignment. It is saying, I want your will more than my worry. Many people want blessings, but they want them on their own terms. They want increase without surrender, and that creates conflict inside. The heart is divided. One hand is reaching to God, the other hand is gripping control. But control and trust cannot sit on the same throne. When you surrender, you empty the throne of fear, and you make room for peace. Practically, surrender begins in prayer, but it continues in choices. It looks like refusing to rehearse worst-case scenarios all day. It looks like doing your work for the day and resting at night instead of torturing yourself with what you cannot fix. It looks like asking for wisdom and then acting on that wisdom, even if the step seems small. It looks like speaking with faith instead of speaking with doom. It looks like writing a plan, then holding the plan loosely. It looks like being consistent, not frantic. It looks like trusting timing, not forcing outcomes. When you surrender, you also accept that God's provision may come through unexpected channels. Sometimes the answer is not money first. Sometimes the answer is an idea. Sometimes it is a relationship. Sometimes it is a delay that protects you from a mistake. Sometimes it is a correction that saves you. Sometimes it is a new skill that increases your value. When you surrender control, you stop demanding one method and you become open to divine creativity. You become teachable. You become attentive. You become patient. These qualities make you ready for what you are asking for. Key point 4, therefore, is not a motivational phrase. It is a spiritual contract. You agree to obey and steward, and God agrees to supply according to His wisdom. Your job is to be faithful, not frantic. Your job is to be responsible, not restless. Your job is to plant, not to control the weather. When you have done your part, you can relax, because the burden of provision is no longer on your shoulders. It is on God's shoulders, and His shoulders are strong for you. Key point 5 says faith works best in rest, meaning the condition of your inner world determines the strength of your outer walk. Faith is not only a statement you repeat, it is a posture you live from. When the inside is restless, the outside becomes rushed, and even correct actions become heavy. But when the inside is resting, your actions become clear, steady, and fruitful. Rest is not the absence of effort. It is the absence of panic. It is the calm confidence that you are guided and not alone, so you can move without fear choking your breath. Many people assume breakthrough comes from intensity and pressure. They think if they worry enough, they will be prepared. If they push hard enough, they will be safe. If they control every detail, nothing will collapse. Yet strain reduces clarity. Fear narrows vision, making you see only threats, not options. It makes you react instead of respond. It makes you treat every delay as disaster and every obstacle as a verdict. Rest does the opposite. Rest widens your vision so you can notice possibilities, hear wisdom, and choose timing instead of forcing outcomes. Faith needs rest because faith is trust, and trust cannot mature under constant suspicion. You can say you believe, yet if you cannot breathe, cannot sleep, cannot stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios, something inside is still trying to save itself. Rest is the evidence that trust has moved from theory into practice. It is the inner agreement that you will do your part faithfully without punishing yourself with fear. In that posture, you become aligned. Your heart softens instead of hardening. Your mind clears instead of spiraling. Your decisions become wiser instead of impulsive. Rest strengthens endurance, and endurance is essential for breakthrough. Breakthrough rarely arrives to the person who quits early. When you live in constant tension, you spend energy on worry that produces nothing. You burn the oil of your soul before the season changes. Rest preserves strength. It is like charging a battery so you can show up again tomorrow with excellence. Faith is not a one-time burst, it is daily consistency. Consistency becomes possible when you are not burning out. Rest also makes you receptive. Provision often comes through small nudges. An idea, a conviction, a warning, a new connection, a better habit, a timely opportunity. Frantic people miss nudges because they are too loud inside. They demand dramatic signs because they are too stressed to notice subtle direction. Rest quiets the inner noise. It makes you attentive. You begin to recognize patterns, learn from feedback without feeling attacked, and receive correction without collapsing. That teachable spirit expands your capacity. Rest improves the quality of your work. Pressure can produce effort, but it often reduces craftsmanship. Anxiety makes you hurry, and hurry creates mistakes. Mistakes create rework, delays, and discouragement. Rest produces focus. Focus produces quality. Quality builds trust. Trust leads to more responsibility and more open doors. Reliability is hard to sustain when your nervous system is constantly in emergency mode. Rest helps you become steady under pressure, and steadiness attracts opportunity. Faith works best in rest because rest protects character. Desperation tempts people to compromise, manipulate, exaggerate, and rush. It makes them accept any offer, tolerate mistreatment, or take shortcuts to feel safe. Rest gives dignity. It teaches you to wait without panic, to say no without fear, and to move without trembling. When you are resting in faith, you can refuse compromise because you are not trying to survive by any means. You are trying to obey with a clean heart, and that makes your life a safer place for increase. Rest also heals your relationship with money. If you are restless, money becomes an emotional anchor. You feel high when you have it and low when you don't. You chase it with fear and spend it with emotion. In rest, money becomes a tool. You can think clearly about budgeting, saving, and giving. You can delay gratification. You can set goals without obsession. You can enjoy what you have without guilt and pursue more without greed. This balance is part of maturity, and maturity is what enables you to manage increase. The posture of rest changes how you face setbacks. When you are restless, setbacks feel like personal failure, and you either quit or become angry. When you are resting, setbacks become information. You ask what can be learned, you adjust without shame, and you keep moving without losing peace. That resilience is powerful. Many people have talent, but they lack the stability to stay through resistance. Rest builds resilience because it anchors you in something deeper than outcomes. Rest also keeps the heart open. Fear makes the heart tight. A tight heart cannot receive help, cannot collaborate well, cannot forgive easily, and cannot celebrate others without jealousy. A rested heart can receive help without pride and work with people without suspicion. Opportunities often travel through relationships, and people are drawn to those who carry peace rather than pressure. Rest does not mean you stop planning. It means you plan from peace. You do the work in front of you and release obsession over what is beyond you. You take responsibility for your habits, discipline, integrity, learning, and attitude. You show up, prepare well, and do your best. Then you release the outcome. That release is not neglect. It is trust. It is the recognition that God can do more with obedience than you can do with anxiety. So outward breakthrough begins with inward rest. When the inside becomes quiet, the outside becomes clearer. When your heart is calm, your mind becomes creative. When your spirit is steady, your hands become skillful. When you stop striving in fear, you start moving in faith, and faith moves with a different rhythm, patient, persistent, joyful, and strong. You do not relax to escape responsibility. You relax to receive direction, to act with precision, and to become vessel prepared for overflow. Key point 6 is about the creative power of words and the responsibility that comes with speaking. Your mouth is not just a tool for communication. It is a steering wheel for your mind, a mirror for your faith, and a gateway for your expectations. What you repeatedly say becomes what you repeatedly see, not because words are magic, but because words train attention, shape emotions, and influence decisions. When you speak fear, you rehearse fear. When you speak hopelessness, you practice surrender. When you speak faith, you strengthen courage. When you speak gratitude, you deepen peace. Speech is direction. To say, your words matter, means that your inner world listens to your outer voice. The human heart is impressionable. It absorbs the language it hears most often, and the voice it hears most often is usually your own. If you constantly declare, nothing will change. You are not simply describing a feeling, you are planting a belief. That belief becomes a lens. Through that lens, you interpret setbacks as proof, delays as rejection, and challenges as curses. Then your behavior follows the lens. You stop trying new options. You avoid good risks. You treat opportunities with suspicion. You lose patience with people. You stop learning. Slowly the prophecy becomes self-fulfilling because the words shaped the choices. Positive confession is not denial of reality. It is refusal to make fear the final authority. It is the discipline of speaking in alignment with God's promises rather than agreeing with panic. There is a difference between acknowledging facts and worshiping facts. A fact might be, my account is low. A fearful confession turns that fact into identity. I will always be broke. A faith confession keeps the fact in its proper place. I am facing a shortage, but I am not forsaken. I will act wisely, and God will guide and provide. The situation is named, but fear is not crowned. Words also shape the atmosphere around you. People feel the spirit of your speech. When your speech is full of bitterness, it leaks bitterness into relationships. When your speech is full of complaint, it drains motivation. When your speech is full of faith and calm, it creates stability. Employers, clients, and colleagues are drawn to those who communicate hope and clarity, especially under pressure. In family life, words can either build safety or build tension. A home can be in a tight season and still feel strong if the language is full of unity, patience, and trust. Your words also influence your nervous system. Harsh internal talk keeps the body in stress mode. Rehearsing disaster in your speech trains the body to expect disaster. That expectation affects sleep, focus, appetite, and energy. Speaking peace, gratitude, and trust can help the body relax, which makes room for creativity and better choices. Faith-filled speech is important because faith itself has a voice. Faith is not silent agreement, faith speaks. When you declare goodness and guidance, you remind your heart who is in charge. You take your thoughts captive and give them a new direction. Consistent confession matters more than occasional inspiration. A single powerful moment can lift you, but daily words build you. Repeated confession shapes character. Over time, you react differently. Not because circumstances changed overnight, but because your inner structure changed. However, positive confession is not empty hype. It must be connected to obedience and action. The point is not to shout and increase while living carelessly. The point is to speak faith while practicing wisdom. Your words should match your values and your steps. If you confess peace, choose habits that produce peace. If you confess provision, steward what you have. If you confess open doors, prepare your skills. Faith-filled words are fuel to fulfill responsibility without fear. Another danger is speaking against yourself. Many people sabotage their own confidence with casual phrases. They call themselves unlucky, always late, always broke, not good with money, not talented, not chosen, not worthy. Even if said as jokes, these phrases become agreements. The heart does not always distinguish between humor and identity. Then, when opportunity appears, the person feels unworthy and pulls back. Words can authorize you to step forward or disqualify you before you try. To speak alignment with God's promises means you keep your tongue in covenant with hope. It means you stop cursing your season and stop declaring defeat before the battle ends. You may still feel anxious, but you do not let anxiety become your confession. You may still be tired, but you do not let tiredness become your prophecy. You speak strength while you rest. You speak guidance while you wait. You speak gratitude while you rebuild. This is not pretending. It is choosing which voice will govern your next step. This practice changes how you pray and how you act. Instead of praying from panic, you pray from trust. Instead of begging with despair, you ask with expectation. Instead of talking only about problems, you speak about God's nature and your next obedient step. Your problem becomes smaller, not because it vanished, but because your view of God became bigger, and you return to action with steadier hands. So key point 6 is a call to guard your mouth like you guard your money, because words are seeds. They go into the soil of the heart, and in time they produce fruit. If you sow fear, you harvest more fear. If you sow faith, you harvest courage, clarity, and persistence. Speak life over your work, your family, your future, and your finances. Speak responsibility without panic. Speak hope without arrogance. Speak truth without despair. Speak as one who trusts God and refuses to partner with fear. Practice this daily before you speak. Ask whether the sentence produces faith or feeds fear. Replace "I can't" with "I will learn." "I'm still standing." Replace "I'm stuck" with "I'm being guided." Small shifts, repeated, transform the atmosphere within. Keep your heart aligned always. Key point 7 is the moment you draw a holy boundary and say, "This pressure is not my assignment." It does not mean you ignore responsibility. It means you refuse to carry a weight that was never meant to live on your shoulders. Many people confuse burden with duty. Duty is what you are called to do today. Work honestly, act wisely, plan, learn, serve, and steward. Burden is the crushing belief that everything depends on you, that you must guarantee outcomes, control timing, and prevent every possible failure. That kind of pressure does not produce faith, it produces exhaustion. When you release the burden, you are not stepping away from life, you are stepping into the correct role. You stop trying to be the savior of your own story, and you return to being a faithful participant. Pressure becomes destructive when it turns into identity. It stops being a signal and becomes a chain. You wake up with it, carry it through the day, and sleep with it. Your mind runs rehearsals, your heart races, and your body stays tense as if danger is constant. In that state you may still function, but you function like a machine running without oil. Over time, you lose joy, creativity, and clarity. You start calling constant stress responsibility, but it is not responsibility, it is bondage. Saying, "This pressure is not my assignment," is a declaration of alignment. It means you accept that some things belong to God alone. The timing of favor, the opening of doors, the protection you cannot see, the provision you cannot predict, the outcomes you cannot force. You can influence your life with obedience, but you cannot command the universe with anxiety. When you release the burden, you acknowledge limits without shame. You stop pretending you are limitless. You accept that you are human. And because you are human, you need grace, rest, guidance, and help. This release is not passive. It is a deliberate act of trust. It is the choice to take your hands off the parts you cannot manage while keeping your hands on the parts you can. It is the difference between steering and carrying. You can steer your habits, but you cannot carry tomorrow. You can steward your budget, but you cannot carry the entire economy. You can do your work with excellence, but you cannot carry the opinions of every person. You can prepare for opportunity, but you cannot carry the outcome of every application. When you refuse the burden, you gain energy to do what is actually yours. Releasing the burden changes your emotional posture. Burden makes you desperate. Desperation makes you compromise. It pushes you to accept toxic conditions, take reckless shortcuts, or lie to protect image. It makes you rush decisions because waiting feels unsafe. When you release burden, you regain dignity. You can wait without panic. You can say no without fear. You can move step by step without demanding to see the entire road. That steady posture is not weakness, it is strength under discipline. This key point is also about warfare on the mind. Pressure often speaks in absolute statements. You will fail. You will never recover. You are running out of time. You are alone. You must fix everything now. These thoughts feel urgent, but urgency is not always truth. When you say, "This pressure is not my assignment," you are challenging that voice. You are refusing to partner with fear. You are choosing to listen to a higher voice that says, you can be guided, sustained, and strengthened. Practically, releasing burden looks like changing your inner conversation. Instead of repeating worst-case scenarios, you ask better questions. What is my next wise step today? What can I control and what must I release? Who can I seek counsel from? What can wait until tomorrow? These questions turn anxiety into action. They convert panic into planning. They move you from emotional spirals to practical steps. Releasing burden also includes humility to receive support. Many people carry pressure alone because they fear judgment. Yet God often relieves burdens through people: a friend, a mentor, a spouse, a colleague, a professional, a community. When you accept help, you are not weak, you are wise. Wisdom knows that isolation amplifies anxiety. Connection restores perspective. Sometimes the burden lifts simply because someone listens, prays with you, or shares a solution you could not see while stressed. This principle also protects your health and your relationships. Constant pressure affects sleep, mood, and focus. It can make you present physically but absent emotionally. When you release pressure, you become more present. You can listen without rushing. You can speak without snapping. You can lead without intimidating. You can love without resentment. This matters because the flow of provision is not only financial, it includes peace, creativity, favor, and relational strength. A soul that is always pressured cannot enjoy what it receives. Another side of releasing the burden is learning to rest after you have done your part. Many people finish a day of work and then continue working in their mind. They replay mistakes, imagine losses, and punish themselves with guilt. But rest is a form of trust. When you can lie down and sleep, you are saying, God is still working even when I am not. That is not laziness, it is faith. You are acknowledging that your life is not sustained by thoughts. Key point 7 becomes a daily practice. Each time fear tries to load new weight onto your shoulders, you respond, "That is not my assignment." You take the burden to God and replace it with obedience. You replace it with a plan for today. You replace it with gratitude for what is already in your hands. You replace it with disciplined action and rest. Over time, you become a person who can face pressure without being owned by pressure, because you have learned to carry responsibility with peace and to release what belongs to God. Key point 8 teaches gratitude before the breakthrough, meaning you give thanks while the answer is still forming, while the door is still closed, while the numbers have not yet changed, and while the evidence is not yet visible. Gratitude is not pretending that pain is pleasant or that problems are imaginary. Gratitude is the discipline of recognizing goodness that already exists, acknowledging help that has already reached you, and honoring the source even before you see the full result. Many people wait to be thankful until the reward arrives, but this key point reverses the order. Gratitude comes first, and then strength, clarity, and favor follow. Gratitude before the breakthrough is powerful because it changes the posture of the heart. A worried heart clenches, and a clenched heart cannot receive well. A grateful heart opens, and an open heart becomes receptive to wisdom, guidance, and opportunities. When you are thankful, you stop staring only at what is missing, and you begin to see what is working.